Welcome to the Top 200 podcast with your host, Herschel Foran.
What's up, everybody? This is Herschel Foran from High School Top 200, and this is the Monday morning meeting. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of hearing me talk about First Team Rugby, because it's the most favorite thing in the world to me, besides my girls. And obviously, this is going to be one of those ones that is, mainly on the finals. There's some other thoughts as well. I've got some other things that I thought that I've been thinking about that I want to share with you. Pretty much just based around First Team Rugby, or rugby in high schools anyway, because I am just one of those that just loves this level of rugby, and I feel like there should be more content that comes out from this. I'm actually surprised that I'm the only one still doing it. I think that there should be other people there, so that everyone has different voices to hear from and different sides of, different opinions, because it is just my opinion, and it's my opinion based off watching a lot of rugby and talking to a lot of people and really getting into this level of rugby. And so I do have some other things that I want to talk to besides this final, but getting right into it. Congratulations to both teams for even just making it there. Congratulations to Hamilton boys for winning it, and for honestly one of the best games. It's funny how one of the best games of the year is just left for the end of the year, and to finish on like a final like that. I think that there's a lot of talk about the two Super 8 teams being in the finals and representing that competition and how hard it is. I think that I've obviously been advocating a lot for the Super 8 being the best competition in New Zealand for a while now. Like they obviously swap and change between the 1A and the Super 8. And I think the Super 8 stood up big time this year as a whole, and there is an argument for actually having almost all the Super 8 teams within the top 15. And the top 15 ranked in the country, just because of how much they won this year and how strong they were this year as a whole. And I mean, even Gisborne boys, who's been lacking within the last 5 years or 6 years or so, due to the change up of how the school is run, every school was like pretty much performed at a real high standard, and the Super 8 was a real high standard. Pretty much through every single game. There's probably a few blowouts that were at the end of the year, at the end of the game kind of blowouts. But other than that, I think for the most part, everything was really tight. It was pretty much that iron sharpens iron kind of situation with all those teams. And I think that this is a pretty strong reflection of how this competition went this whole year. We have Napier boys and Hamilton boys in the finals for the national championship, and then you have the other side of it where you could argue that Hastings boys could have been into it as well. They could have been into that finals. I went down to that Napier and Hastings game where Napier beat them out right at the end as well, and sort of like another one of those kind of finishes where Hastings boys was actually winning in that first half, really dominating in that first half, like pretty easily in a way too. And then it was the last 5 minutes of that first half, and then the second half where Napier just, they just grinded out. Pretty much how they grinded out in this game too is just the way that they did it with that Hastings game. And obviously it carried on to Silverstream, and then, Westlake was okay. It was okay. There's always, something for that. But I already wrote about it sort of in a way, but I mean, if you read it or not, or if you really would rather just listen, because I know that the way that I write is the way that I talk, and if you don't know the way that I talk, then my writing pretty much doesn't make sense. And I'm not a journalist. I didn't go to university for communications or for English or anything like that, or even like any kind of media studies. Is just a passion that I love, and then I've just had to do this out of necessity. But I wrote about the fact that, having John McGlashan and Westlake boys making it there, pretty much making history, and being able to have other teams represent those regions, is something that like no one can ever take away. How sort of like magical it was to have those teams in there. For Westlake boys, and I've said this before, is that to me the Westlake boys one is more impressive. John McGlashan never had, been able to come to the national tournament, and all that kind of stuff is great, and that's cool. And they've never lost a game all year. It's the first time ever they've never lost a game all year, and that is great. John McGlashan has not had and I'm going to call it heartbreak. And I call it heartbreak because John McGlashan, this is like the first year for them really being, I think the last 3 or 4 years have been real solid teams for John McGlashan. And this year is kind of the mountaintop for them in terms of how they wanted it to go. And it pretty much went that way. But if you're Westlake boys is the most unluckiest team, and I've said this before, because even though they could dominate the North Harbour competition, the 1A team is always in their way. And even if they go on an unbeaten season, or if they even just suffer one loss, and that's fine, that's been so many times where they've only just suffered one loss, and then they win the North Harbour competition, I have a feeling, and I kind of think that this is going to be the first step in changing it around, is that I kind of think that whenever Westlake win the national, the North Harbour comp, I think the team kind of switches off. I think the team switches off, and they think, we can't even beat those fellas down there. We can't beat those guys when we cross that bridge or when they come over here. And I think that was always kind of a mental block in the Westlake boys rugby program as a whole, because it's like almost every single year. They've won that competition so many times consecutively as well, that sometimes it is kind of ridiculous in a way how good they are within there. And I honestly think that 1A in Auckland and the North Harbour should just join competitions to have an even stronger, competition. And then the 1B for Auckland and North Harbour, would be even stronger as well, with teams that can compete. But Westlake should be one of those teams that is a 1A team, because they could almost finish top 4 every single year in that 1A. And they have the players to prove it, and then they have the under-15 program to prove it, because this year they almost won nationals at the under-15 with their under-15 tournament that they had. And even when they were going to the Hurricanes under-15 tournament, they were also doing really good there too, where they had to play Silverstream and they had to play St. Peter's and they had to play Kelson, but they play in that under-15 Auckland comp. So to them, they're used to that kind of stuff. So now it's all kind of catching up, where they're now able to compete, getting older and older. Now, they're unlucky because they've also had the most losses, and they've never ever been past that qualifying stage. And I actually think that there was like a full rugby program switch off of like, we're just going to go out there, do our best, see what happens, but no real kind of belief that they're going to actually win the game. And and even when I wrote about the game, I still wasn't sure. This is kind of how close the game was. Is that even before, and I wrote about it, and I didn't even know who to pick in terms of a prediction. And then, like, usually I pick a prediction anyway. Like, I'm not scared to say who I think is going to win and why. But I honestly did not know. And I honestly did not know because it was that close and it was that fair and it was that even. That if Westlake won, it wasn't going to be a surprise. And I said that, I said it wasn't going to be a surprise if they won because they had the team, they had the forward pack. So for them to even get past that point of the 1A, be able to reach that point where they get to represent the Blues region for the national title, to me was like such a proud moment for the boys and for the rugby program. And it should be an eye-opening because they've got the under-15s that made the finals to the nationals and the under-15 level, and then they also made the top 4 for the first 15 nationals as well, and they should be looked at as one of the programs, probably the best program maybe this year in rugby as an all-round. That's how good that they are. Their second 15 is really strong. They've got other, under 16s and all that kind of stuff that do punch above their weight. Under 15s are really good too. So under 14s are really good. So they've got a really strong base in terms of a rugby program going on there. Now, I'm not going to say that they're going to win next year too, but what I'm saying is that there is now a belief that those guys are not that far away, and it's going to be, they need to make these gaps like smaller and smaller. Now, I don't know if that's like a convincing thing for the Auckland A to go, yeah, let's have them in here, because Auckland A is going to be like, no, we don't want them in here if they're going to consistently make our finals or might make the finals and beat us out and we don't get to go anymore. Whatever that decision is, but in terms of rugby as a whole, I think that should be a pretty, it doesn't hurt rugby, it just makes it better, but it would hurt the Auckland program, I guess. And I guess this sort of the selfishness out of it is probably the reason why they probably wouldn't want it. But those two histories made with John McGlashan and Westlake boys making it to the finals, to the top 4, in itself is one of those kind of, it's never going to happen before, where history like that is going to be made in that way and in that fashion, how it was. And I've always talked about John McGlashan throughout this whole year, making sure that I gave them the respect for how many games that they won, how many games in a row that they won, for their streak that they were on, for the way that they did it. I've watched all the John McGlashan games this year. I've watched all the Kings High School games this year. I've watched half of the Otago boys games this year, and almost half of the Southland boys games this year, and understand how, which gave me the understanding of how hard it was for them to remain unbeaten to that stage. In that stage of winning the Otago comp, which was great, and then them going through to beating Nelson, which was a solid win too, and then coming up into the finals. And so even then, for John McGlashan, having that type of year with that kind of core players that they had was also a special thing, and that shouldn't be overlooked and should be celebrated as well. And so, I don't want to take away from those guys having the solid year that they have. Now, in saying that, when it comes to when it came to the top 4 games in the semi-finals, there was a lot of discussion. I did get a lot of emails and messages about can these teams handle it? Can these teams rise up to the stage of a top 4 and be like, yeah, we're okay being here? Now, the obvious question was no. The obvious question was like, no, they just weren't ready, and they didn't know what they were expecting, and they didn't know. And I was just like, well, yeah, that's kind of like the normal response that any of those teams would have. It's their first time. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what to expect as a rugby program. Those coaches didn't know what to expect. They've never been at that point where they've had to sort of switch it up that many times and play different competitions and play these teams that, Westlake boys and Hamilton boys have had some, preseason games before in the past, but not at the point where it actually meant something. And then they had to go and play Napier boys who they've never really played against at all, and then go, well, there's a lot riding on this game. This one game that we've come, and we just made history last week, and then now we're supposed to come and redo history again and rewrite it again. It's just like, well, it's not really an easy thing to do. There's not a lot of teams in any sports and in any kind of situations that make it there for the first time and then go on to win the championship off that. I was like, I can't even think. I watch a lot of sports. I watch a lot of college basketball, college football, NFL, NBA. I watch, a lot of baseball and hockey. I watch a bunch of those. I watch the league. I watch league over here and over in England. I watch, obviously rugby and across the whole world in terms of all the competitions that go on. And there's no real teams that just come out of nowhere and just win it for the first time after not being there. That's just impossible. It's almost impossible to do. And so to ask these guys to beat Hamilton boys and to beat Napier boys was going to be a hard ask. And I've got to be honest, I actually picked John McGlashan to beat Hamilton boys because of the way that they were playing. Hamilton boys for the last 3 weeks, the games against Tauranga and the games against New Plymouth weren't that great. The one against St. John's was shaky in the start, but sort of got through it. But the Tauranga boys wasn't a good one for them, where they sort of fell asleep. The New Plymouth boys one, they almost just, didn't deserve to win it kind of situation. And Ollie Mathis was playing on 1 foot. And honestly, I don't think if Ollie didn't play that after he got hurt his leg, I don't think they would have won, because he's the one that actually set up the try to go ahead, and he was the one that got one of the crucial turnovers that they have when New Plymouth was making their run. So for me, I was thinking, well, if they're bringing this form in and just looking at form alone, not the history of the school and all that kind of stuff, and what coaching pedigree that they have and all that kind of stuff, I was thinking, no, John McGlashan should win this. Too big in the forwards, too strong in the forwards. They got a really good midfield that matches up well with their midfield, and just judging from that's where I was saying, well, John McGlashan should be able to win this game. Now, obviously, playing the game is going to be different. Now, that's where sort of the strength of schedule is what I talk about a lot too, is where the Super 8 has it over a lot of other competitions, and the 1A has it too. The Miles Toyota Championship down in Christchurch also has it as well, where they have a lot of good teams that can keep you really sharp, but they do have those weak teams in the middle where if they're not on their good years, they could really bring a weak team that is not really a good team to keep yourself sharpened. Mid Canterbury had to pull out this year, and I wish they kind of stayed, but those were one of those kind of teams that just, I don't know, for whatever reason, I hope they get back in next year, but competitions like that is the reason why those kind of teams are strong. And, Hamilton boys pretty much just showed their pace. They showed the support game that they had. They showed, their passing skills, the trust in each other, the confidence in each other, and pretty much just showed a lot of footwork and how to play in space. And it really was something that John McGlashan's never seen before. They haven't seen this kind of gameplay before. They've never played a team with so much pace and quickness at the ruck, where before they even started to commit guys to going to the ruck, the ball was already gone or was already up in the air ready to leave, and they were already trying to make that decision to go to the ruck, and then seeing the ball fly out, and then they had to fly somewhere else, and all that kind of stuff. And it just really was, even watching the replay again, I was saying, oh man, all the boys that I really liked on that John McGlashan side were just just trying to run around and scramble and catch. They were almost like catching up all the time. And then it's like two people reading an article, and the faster reader's already changing, and they're like, oh, hold on, yeah, I'm the slower reader. Oh, hold on, go back. And like, it was kind of like that. And John McGlashan was just trying to keep up, and it just really wasn't working for them. It really was. They were just really behind. The same kind of thing with Westlake boys is that Westlake boys made too many mistakes right in the beginning, got behind on the scoreline, and then that forward pack just soaked it all up. Everything that Westlake had just soaked it all up and pretty much spat out points once they soaked it all up, and it was hard to watch, and it was both teams losing was not it wasn't the way, it was the way that they sort of lost in the scoreline and the way that it looked. If they lost and it lost like sort of in a margin of like, oh yeah, we did great, I know that both teams were pretty disappointed in the way that they played and the way that they showed out on their first time at the stage of the at this stage, national stage, and I knew they weren't happy with the way that they played. But to me, it's like, yeah, that's fine, but it's not that easy. And I hope that they take home back to their rugby program and back to their homes and their schools and to the younger boys, and they have to talk to the younger boys and go, we felt what this feels like up the top there, and this is different. It's not impossible to get there now, but it is different, and we got to be prepared. And those younger boys who are under 14s and under 15s, they got to talk to them and go, hey, this is what is expected of you fellas. This is what it takes to get there. And you guys need to be the ones that learn it now and to pass it on and to always be at that level of, that higher level of gameplay, and hope that, it changes the way that the rugby programs and the boys within the rugby program look at being the best in the country. And I think the Super 8 just do it different. Because I live in the region and because I go to so many games and I talk to coaches and I've had so many conversations with boys for over the years, they know winning the Super 8's one thing, but they never take their eye off the national title. And to me, that's a real big difference. Hamilton losing the finals for the Super 8, then winning the national title, for me erases that Super 8 loss of their finals. Because in their minds they were like, okay, that's fine, but we're still in the run for the national title, and that's where we're gonna be. And then they went through St. John's, Tauranga beat Rotorua, then they went through then they went through Tauranga, then they went through New Plymouth, got here to the fight, went through John McGlashan, and all of that built up to this ending, And for Napier boys, it was kind of the same way too, is where they looked at the situation that they were stuck in, and they're like, shoot, we missed out on even competing for that Super 8 final, where it came down to just Hastings boys and Rotorua, and depending on that win and loss that Hamilton had, it could have been a Hastings Hamilton boys final. Then we saw the try not given at the end of the Hamilton boys game. We saw Rotorua come through, win that title, and Napier was sitting there going, shoot, that's kind of where we should have been. Still having that chance of going, well, we'll just get them at nationals. Then they went through their run. Hastings boys, Silverstream, then coming to Westlake boys, and then getting into that final. Both teams Super 8, both teams different regions, the Hurricanes region and the Chiefs region, still going, okay, we didn't get to where we wanted to be in that Super 8, but our thing is always still looking past it into the finals. And I think it's just a different mentality that Super 8 teams have. I mean, even Palmy boys, without all the injuries that they had all this year, which is so many injuries, couldn't even get any combinations that they really wanted right because the injuries happened all the time. Even they competed every single game with what they had. And that's another school that you could have looked at as well and go, man, shoot. And then you look at Tauranga boys, and Tauranga boys, you know, in preseason, beat John McGlashan and Nelson College in preseason. Which shows you the kind of like the strength if you wanted to, you know, find some commonality between those kind of competitions. Just like, well, Tauranga went down for their South Island trip and beat both of those teams who ended up being in the finals for, you know, the South Island, and they were the ones, and they just like, yeah, we went and did our job. The only bad thing is that they came back up north and had an Auckland Grammar game that week that they got back, had to travel up, and then they lost to Auckland Grammar. You know, it's like one of those mixed up kind of situations where they probably thought, man, we should have just cancelled this game and shouldn't have even have it. But that's one of the annual games that they have, or had Auckland Grammar travel, something like that, you know. But that final, I think if there was an MVP, right, I think it would probably be between Peyton Spencer and probably CJ Meany. And here's always my problem with this, and this is the other thing that I don't like, is that the Chiefs under 18s has already been selected, and I don't even think they know that CJ Meany is from Taupo, and Taupo is in our Chiefs region. And I think if they knew that he was there, I think he would be there. For the last 4 or 5 weeks, he's been really showing out, you know, how valuable he was. And remember, and like, I mean, I know that they don't remember because I know that they don't watch these games like I do, but CJ came from Taupo as a year 11, playing in the first team for Taupo Nui Aotea. Just wanted better rugby, moved over to Napier boys without any kind of real target, and he just started on the wing, you know, played some preseasons on the wing, did really well, worked his way into the midfield, and I guess once Rats and them found the combinations that they had, and it ended up being, you know, Meany, Drinkwater, and Adam Curran out on the wing as well, you know, and they had their mixture. CJ was one of like the key parts in this, you know. I have him ranked, you know, probably for the past 5 weeks he's been ranked in the year 12s. And it's all right if they didn't pick him up, but hopefully they pick him up, you know, next year. Waikato Chiefs pick him up next year. Not hopefully, just go pick him up next year. Make sure that he's part of that team. You know, or there's a lot of boys that are from the Chiefs region that I don't reach out to. They don't reach out to them and go, hey, come back to the region. It's so annoying, but he would be probably my MVP apart from Peyton Spencer in terms of the 2 games together. I thought he played really, really well. And it's funny too because CJ's South African, and him and DJ Van der Westhuizen from Westlake boys, their families know each other from South Africa. Not from here, from South Africa. So for them to play in the finals together against each other in their semi-finals, it was like everyone from back home probably had a pretty big, pretty buzzy to watch 2 South Africans that knew each other from South Africa to just come to New Zealand and then end up playing each other there. And they've both only been here for like a few years or so. They haven't been here long. And it must have been pretty cool to see both of those two go at each other. But CJ is probably one of the, to me, one of the MVPs for that Napier boys side. From defense, running the ball, you know, being able to lock in on guys like Aki and also be able to, even when it came to helping out at the breakdown, he was always there. and he was always making sure that he was making his tackles and things like that. And I just thought, as a whole, he had like a really, really massive top 4 tournament. And I thought, if it's not Peyton Spencer, I think I would give it to him. Napier actually in this game, in this finals, their kicking was awesome. Burkett and Curran, just the way that he was booting the hell out of their ball, all the way down there, he just sent them all the way back, and Hamilton always just had to work their way back. Corey was so accurate with the way that he kicked the ball. The defense was solid, and the forward pack was solid as well. And that's kind of what I really liked, was just the grit and grind of it, of the way that they played. And I've seen some people's comments saying that Hamilton boys didn't deserve it. It's like, you can't really say they didn't deserve it, because they won in the end. But there is an argument for the way that Napier boys played, because they played awesome. They played awesome the whole game. I actually don't think that anyone had a bad game. Like, there's always like few players that you're just like, man, why, they've made so many mistakes so far. Like, I thought everyone had a good game. I don't think there was anyone that really had a bad game. That's why the game was like 15-17. There's no blowout. Like, I guess on a blowout, you would see and pinpoint guys that had, hard time tackling, hard time, keeping up, hard time covering their side. Even when Hamilton boys were making those breaks out on the edge, those breaks were fine, but they were always there covering. And then once they covered and made those tackles, they were always over the breakdown. So good at the breakdown, Napier boys was. Hamilton on the other side of it was the way that they spread the ball so fast, finding those gaps, and then being able to not just break through, but be able to have that support there, just like what they did in the John McGlashan game, is that I thought that was so impressive, just the way that they were able to keep up with that pace and accuracy, and then they were there all the time. I think that they should have maybe did a bit more on that breakdown, cleaning guys out, making sure that you seal it off, that they just weren't doing that kind of stuff, and you always found Napier in there, and the way that they got their hands to the ball. The Prouting brothers had really good games, Angus and George. And remember, Angus is only year 12, George is only year 11, so they're both going to be back next year. Tasman's going to be back next year, who's the prop, who I think is... Tasman, to me, is going to be one of the most exciting players that are coming back next year, and I think he's going to be one of the top props in the country next year, and I'm already kind of thinking about him being a top 5 prop next year. And obviously, I'll write all that stuff before the year ends and I shut this all down. I'm going to write about all these guys, and CJ for sure is going to be there, Tasman for sure is going to be there, Prouting brothers for sure going to be there, Khan Stevens is for sure going to be there, as well as Joel Russell at halfback, Josh Augustine as well at fullback, Will on the wing, all these guys. Napier boys can make another run for the finals next year, and that's how good this team is that they can make this other run. Even though they lose guys like George, Gus Brown, and also Max Ratcliffe, Jared Martin they lose, Tyron Crystals they lose, Tully they lose, Adam Curran they use, like all these guys. Even though they lose those guys, the guys that are coming back, solid team coming back, and it's not going to be a surprise if they make it back again next year too. And because it's that way, Hamilton boys also have half the team coming back next year. The midfield is going to be crazy for that Hamilton boys team, and they're going to have pretty much a full backline coming back of starters, almost a full backline of starters. Curtis Hunter will come off the bench, come into fullback, and all these guys are all going to be back again. So this could be a possibility for next year's final as well. And then we still got to talk about Hastings, that are also another team that's coming back, pretty stacked. There's actually a few few teams around the country that have got a really good returning class next year. Nelson is another one that has a good amount of, Auckland Grammar's got a good amount of guys coming back too. Heaps of these teams. Silverstream looks pretty strong too as well, coming back with a lot of guys. But the final was great. Like the final, I loved it. I loved the game. I loved the spirit in which it was played. I loved the fact that there was a lot of respect given to both teams. You get your little niggles and kind of stuff like that there, here and there, and like a lot of trash talking and all that kind of stuff. But it wasn't like overboard, that kind of, overboard stuff. I just liked the way it was. But yeah, massive final. Proud of all the boys. Proud of everything that these guys have done this year, and keeping us all entertained and showing us how much skills and how much talent and this overload of talent that we have in New Zealand with First 15 Rugby. And I've loved covering First 15 Rugby this year and being able to at least give back in some way that I can to making sure the boys get talked about and give a bit of light on, and pretty much give them their flowers while they're in the First 15, because the First 15 career is not a long time. And so ever since I've done this, it's always been about the boys, and I've loved being able to report on the boys and just show the rest of New Zealand how much talent we have. The other game that I want to talk about is the Westlake and John McGlashan, third and fourth placing teams. Like, I wish I could say it was a good game, but Westlake boys winning it, that's all I can report, is that they won it. I don't know if it was on another channel, because I was looking for it, but I couldn't see it. And them not showing it, honestly, them not showing it pissed me off. It annoyed me so much that Sky did not show that game. And when they didn't show the game, I looked at the other games on the other channels that were on, and I was thinking, why are we seeing these replays of these other games, and we've got our own homegrown talent here, our own finals here, and they're playing replays of other sports from other countries that I don't think a lot of people would care about, but they don't want to promote the first thing, and it's like, we saw the teams play on Friday. Let us see them again on the Sunday, so we get a full picture of it. They didn't even show the girls' third and fourth place team either, which was another game that they should have played. And what bugged me so much is that to me, it was almost like disrespectful that they didn't show those two teams, the Westlake boys and the John McGlashan game. I don't know, like, I mean, I didn't see it. I didn't see any listing of it. I didn't see anything like that. But the people that were back home over the shore and down in Dunedin, I'm sure that they would want to see that. But for them to not show it, well, I wasn't able to see it. I mean, I hope I'm wrong and someone goes, no, it was on this channel, you just had to do this, or there's a replay of this, but I really wanted to watch the game, and when I couldn't find it, I was like, holy crap, guys. It's like, you guys couldn't make that space, like give them that space? You couldn't buy that space for that game to show them? And that's the other thing that annoys me about rugby in New Zealand at this level, is that when we come for the National Championship game, you just want to show the National Championship game. What about the third and fourth that we just saw as well? You don't you take away the context of what happens to those teams. Like, they don't even matter anymore. Like, that's the worst thing, even for me, it's just like, I've been following Christchurch Girls High School this whole year, just through their rugby page, just through their Christchurch Girls Rugby page, and through their scores that I go and look at on the Canterbury page, rugby page, I follow the girls' Manukura team from their rugby page as well, their school page that they have, which is really good. Both teams have got really good ones. And then I've only seen a little bit of Auckland Grammar girls page and things like that, and even Manu there as well, because I follow their stuff. But at the same time, it's just like, I know I do this, and people go, well, you should do the girls too. It's just like, there's just not enough time. And I've always said, like, give me the funding to do it, and I'll find people to do it. I'll give someone the rugby page and go, hey, you do this for me, I'll pay you to do this, and I'll go do the girls' ones. I'll do exactly what I'm doing for the boys, for the girls, and have someone take over my part and go, this is how you do it, and I'll just take them through it. But the thing that pisses me off is that New Zealand Rugby's not doing it. They're not doing it themselves. I can understand if they go, no, we've got our way that we want to do it, and the way that we want to promote it is just like, well, who are you promoting it to? Because no one's seen this. No one knows who these girls are. I mean, no one really knows who these boys are unless they come onto my page and they go, oh, well, here's a massive list of 200 boys that we should probably go and watch. Here's a massive list of 100 boys of these year 12s. And look, they got some year 11s, 60 boys of year 11s. But where's this thing for the girls? And the girls' game, which is so huge right now, and it's going really, really good, and a lot of that probably has to be, like I've said, it's like you should probably credit touch and tag for this, for the skills that these girls have learned and brought through since they were 5 years old playing touch and tag, and they brought it into high school rugby, and now they've got the passing skills and catching skills and side steps and all that kind of stuff, and they just need to learn how to tackle and do all the little extra stuff that they need. But in a big way, Sevens and that has benefited so much from this, but we don't want to promote them from this high school age. Why not? You guys are not even doing it on the rugby stage. You don't want to help me do it on the rugby stage. Now we got the girls who are playing really well. And Christchurch girls, who have a massive average, I don't know, there was probably 3 times this year they scored 100 points. Even their finals was like 60-something, I think. And with all due respect, this is the first time that Christchurch girls this year has had a proper hard game. Even the Manurewa one, if you looked at the scoreline, you're like, oh, well, that was kind of a hiding. It's like, well, not really. Not really, not in the way that Christchurch girls had played their games, because they were off to massive leads early in those games. They had to fight Manurewa for a good first half, and then their second half, they're just like, oh, okay, now we're starting to get somewhere with this. And then the Manukura one, both, drawing at 19 all, it's the first time they've had such a hard game. Now, what I think they should do now is that they need some of these bigger schools if you got Christchurch girls, Manukura, St. Mary's from Wellington, Fielding, Hamilton girls, maybe Auckland girls and Mags, someone like that. Manurewa was probably another one. Southland girls always got a pretty good team too. Is that they probably need to come together in a preseason and all have a solid, strong preseason all together, and then figure each other out. Have these really good hard preseason games against each other, even if it's like 20-minute games against each other. Bring in all these coaches, whoever the region that they put in. Bring in some of these professional coaches that they do with the boys, and then they go away and disband and go back to their competitions, and then hopefully they all meet back somewhere in the top 4 again. Just to lift that talent level. They need to do something like that. I had another idea where I thought that they should have had 10-a-side tournaments that were like 2-day tournaments or 1-day tournaments, every term for the 3 terms, and then make sure that they all come together within their regions of like Chiefs, Blues, all that kind of stuff, and then make sure that they start picking tournament teams from all those 10-a-side little tournaments that they have per term, and then go all these kids that were picked for tournament teams, bring them all into camps for their Chiefs Blues, and make sure that they start identifying the talent there. And I don't want to hear this thing about New Zealand rugby got their own way of identifying it, identifying their talent. You know how they identify it? They identify it through my website. They identify it through their friend, through who their mate's a coach, their mate's seen someone. And this is kind of the reason why I put up those 3 boys from Matamata College. Not just because they weren't picked up, but they were pretty much ripped off. I guarantee you, 100%, if you asked any of the teams that they played this year, and you asked them how good those 3 players were, they would tell you, oh yeah, we actually can't. A lot of them would say that, oh, we don't understand why they wouldn't make it. For how good these players are. And I hope the Blues pick them up. I hope the Crusaders pick them up. I hope the Highlanders go, hey, we'll take those guys. I hope NRL comes and says, oh yeah, we'll take those fellas. To get them out of the Chiefs region. As much as I love the Chiefs, it's like I'm always the boys first. Now, if they don't want to go take a trip down there, 45 minutes down the road here out of Hamilton, and go and see how talented these boys are, and Matamata play in Hamilton almost every single week, and you haven't seen these boys? Strange. Like, what are you doing, man? And I see how many of these guys use my website to find talent, use my website to sort of get a gauge on who these guys are. And it's 100% there for that reason. But at least acknowledge the fact that I'm the one helping you guys out. At least acknowledge the fact to your bosses, to the organization that, oh no, we go on Herschel's thing a lot. Not the pure fact that we agree with him sometimes. It's like, at least he gives us a gauge on something. At least he gives us more boys to look at from more different schools. But the thing is that they don't want to go out there, and if you're not paying attention, and you're not paying attention to stuff like mine, you won't even know that those boys exist. And then the worst thing is that the people at the top of these player development things don't want to acknowledge the fact that they're not doing the work to do that. And that's their job. How do you not know about those boys in Matamata? How? Like, I don't understand that. And they come to Hamilton every single week to play a game. I have been saying how good Matamata was going to be last year, because when these boys were all at year 11s, I was looking at these guys, I was like, who are those fellas and how old are they? And then they were telling me, I was going, oh shoot. And then I saw them last year, and I was going, if all these boys are coming back, they're going to be a big deal. I had them ranked in the top 25 early this year. Now my thing is supposed to be looked at. It's supposed to be listened to. It's supposed to be used for the benefit of being able to see the boys and the talent. A lot of guys use it and it's great. But the guys at the top have this arrogance about themselves, like, oh, we don't need to look at that stuff. It's like, no, because you're not even looking at this level that you're supposed to be looking at. Your talent ID. ID the talent. Even if you don't agree with me, that's fine. It's not supposed to be agreed with. Mine is opinion based, and you're supposed to go for yourself and say, is he right or is he wrong? Sometimes guys are too scared to admit that I can see the talent, that I've identified it already. Strange. It's like, oh, strange. I didn't find them, so I'm not going to say anything. I don't want to take his opinion because he found them first. It's like, Dick, it's about giving these boys opportunities. Who cares about me? Make sure you see these boys, or else they're not going to get paid. There's some other boys that have been missed out too. And I hope in these other regions, they actually look inside their regions, because if they don't, I'm going to go put it out and go, what about these boys? And they got to stay out of just these top leagues and go and look at the second divisions. Every second division's got some boys in there that can play. Please find these boys that can play. I'm the one looking at them. I'm the one talking about them. Just go and have a look at them. Stop just looking at these boys' schools and the top schools in that region and go, oh, we got to find these diamonds that are over there. Just polish them off a bit. Dig them up a little bit, because they're all there. And I've already got in my mind and on my paper and on my, on my spreadsheets, guys that I'm hoping that they pick up, that are part of these small schools, that I'm hoping that they bring through. And if they don't, then I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to talk about why they didn't get picked. I'm probably going to go, well, put them in a Moana Pacific team, that under 18 team. I don't think that, is it this year or was it next year? Moana Pacific is supposed to do an under 18 program. I think it was part of the deal of when they brought us, so they couldn't do it within the first 3 years or something like that anyway. But keep them in mind for when they finish this year and go, all right, now we can go and have a talk to them. But that's what it's supposed to all be for. And my whole thing is just give these boys a chance. Give them a chance. Have a look at them. Reach outside of the top schools. Reach outside of the top 25 ranked schools that are in your area. And make sure you go and find all these other players that are there that didn't want to accept scholarships, that didn't want to move schools, that didn't want to leave their families and just want to stay with their boys. And if they made that decision, fine, but at least go out and look for them. Don't just leave them there. Don't just leave them, undiscovered. They're still good players. They just need to be brought into some of these camps so they can go, okay, we'll catch them up to the pace. We'll bring them up to standard and go, this is now the pace that you have to play at, not that pace that you're playing down there. Stay at this pace. You're better than this. You're better than that pace. You need to be playing at this pace. They've already got the talent. They've already got the size. They've already got the smarts. They've already got everything that you need. Keep them up with the pace. That's usually the first thing that I see whenever I go to these rep games and these rep trials, and I'll go and watch them. I already know the guys that are at smaller schools when they come to training, because I see it every year. They're the ones that are sort of not as organized. They're the ones that are trying to do too much. They're the ones that don't know that it's like, oh no, the role that we gave you, that's just the role that you're playing. Like, you're a flanker, just do flanker stuff. Don't try and kick the ball, don't try and do grubbers, don't try and do, skip passes out on the edge, because that's what you do for your team who need you to do all that stuff. It's like, no, just take care of your thing, it's all right. They're the ones that you're going, hey, come over here. You're over here with us. You're not supposed to be over there. Those are those guys. Those are those guys that don't know how to warm up properly. They think running four corners is their warm up. They don't know how to do individual warm-ups because no one's ever told them at their smaller school that they're at. And while everyone's doing their warm-ups, they're kind of just standing around stretching their hamstring, but really just looking at everybody. And they're such talented boys that just haven't got any direction from their school that they're at. But we still need to find those boys because they're all still out there. They're all still out there. And sometimes why there's a good thing with scholarships is scholarships bring them into a bigger school where they actually get to get looked at. They actually get to have that opportunity to be noticed and focused on and all that kind of stuff, because if they were at the smaller school that they were at before, they wouldn't be discovered. And there's some boys at those smaller schools right now that should be discovered and they're not. Or they're not given the credit that they deserve just because they're at a small school. That's why New Zealand Rugby needs to do a lot more at this level. Do a lot more. I don't know what else I can say about that. But I love first 15 rugby. And I hope that I'm able to be given a chance at least to try and get a girls one started up. Give me some funding to do it. I will do it. I'll do all the scouting. I'll do everything that I need to do, just like I've done with the boys, so that these girls can get seen as well. And let me, give me the funding to work everything else out, and we'll get them seen. And I'll do anything that I can so that these kids can get seen and that they can get the opportunities as well, because they train too hard. They sacrifice too much to not be given the credit of being able to be talked about and be seen and to be, praised while they're at school and doing the best that they can. That's kind of the way that I look at it. That's kind of the way I look at it. And I think parents also agree is that where they see their son get up early in the morning, where they see their son not eat when everyone's out at a family dinner, and the other one's like, no, I'll just have this salad. I'll just have this. And no, I don't want that. Those are the parents that appreciate what I do so much, because they see how much their boys give up. And the girls are starting to do that too. The girls are starting to put in that same commitment, and the parents are starting to look at that too. Remember, I've got girls. I call them my two assistants that, a lot of you guys probably see me around games, have my two girls around there too. That I know one of them's not going to play rugby, but if the other one ends up playing rugby, I would feel the same way. I'd feel the same way if my daughter was putting in a lot of work and then, it almost came to nothing, that no one wants to say anything, that no one wants to acknowledge it, that nobody wants to talk about it or anything like that. I would feel the same way as a parent. And my girls are my best friends. That's kind of thing, that's the kind of energy that I'm trying to put out there as well. It's just like, no, I know from a parent's point of view, it's just like, yeah, what about my son? And all the work, I was like, just talk about it. Acknowledge that he's playing good. Acknowledge that he's really lifted his game, and I try and do that a lot. That's why I talk about it with so many kids. But now we're past this national stage, and Hamilton boys are the national champs for New Zealand. We're now into rep rugby, and that's probably what I'm going to start talking about now. And then as it comes towards the end of the year and I start wrapping all this kind of stuff up, I will leave everybody with as much information as possible all the way into next year, so it gives everybody an idea of what's happening next year, who to look for and all that kind of stuff. And I'll just leave the website up, and then people can just go on and have a look at it as well. But that's me. That's my rant for today. Congratulations to Napier Boys High School and Hamilton Boys High School, to Westlake Boys and to John McGlashan as well, for all making the top four, and Hamilton Boys High School winning another national championship that puts them tied at the top with, Kelson Rotorua, something like that. Chiefs Region just got too many titles. But that's me. Herschel Fraun, later, Bolt.